Over 1,000 miles of desert, a drone hovered alone. No soldiers nearby, no threat in sight. Just one man below, walking across the sand, carrying a plastic bag. The drone's sensor tracked him, not because of who he was, but because of how he moved. From far above, a red box blinked on a targeting screen. No voices, no orders, only a green light from an algorithm. Seconds later, the strike. There was no breaking news, no televised statement, no public record of who approved the kill, because no one did. The decision came from software. It wasn't debated. It was calculated. His name? Unknown. His intent? Classified. The reason he died? Still hidden in code. This wasn't science fiction. This is a glimpse of warfare already unfolding. Across the globe, militaries are deploying autonomous drones that can select and strike without direct human oversight. They're fast, precise, and silent in more ways than one. But when machines are allowed to decide who lives and who dies, the questions are no longer just tactical. They're moral. They're legal. They're human. In this documentary, we dive into the world of AI-powered weapons, how they work, where they're being used, and what it means for the future of accountability, warfare, and the very concept of human judgment. Because in this new era, every decision begins with code, but ends with a life. The year was 2020. A UN report, mostly overlooked by global media, described an incident in Libya. A Turkish-built Kargu-2 drone had allegedly hunted down and engaged a human target. No orders were given. No human intervened. It may have been the first recorded instance of a fully autonomous drone making a kill in combat. There was no confirmation from Turkey. The manufacturer downplayed the report, and the international community, distracted by a pandemic, mostly ignored it. But for military analysts, that quiet moment marked the crossing of a line. For decades, drones had required a person in the loop, someone to approve the strike. But the Kargu-2, according to the UN, used machine learning to identify a moving target, determine it was hostile, and fire. And it did so without human oversight. In traditional warfare, lethal decisions come with layers of command, intelligence, and political accountability. Even in the high-speed chaos of battle, humans have hesitation, doubt, and moral pause. An algorithm has none of that. It simply calculates. The Kargu-2 was just one drone. Its range, limited. Its payload, small. But its autonomy was a proof of concept and a warning. Because once one nation crosses the line, others will follow. Autonomous drones don't need global consensus. They don't wait for treaties. And the line between defense and offense becomes just another variable in the code. We often imagine AI wars of the future as distant science fiction. But in that moment in Libya, the future became history. And the machine chose to fire. 2 decades ago, drone warfare looked very different. In 2001, when the U.S. launched its first drone strike in Afghanistan, a trained pilot sat in a control room thousands of miles away, watching a live feed, making the decision, pulling the trigger. It was remote warfare, but it was still human warfare. Today, that pilot has been replaced by predictive code. Modern drones are no longer just flying cameras. They're self-guided systems that can track, target, and eliminate, sometimes with zero human involvement. They ingest massive datasets, facial recognition, heat signatures, gait analysis, movement anomalies. The drone doesn't see the way humans do. It interprets patterns, flags deviations, predicts intent. Israel's Harpy drones are designed to loiter above battlefields and autonomously dive onto radar targets. South Korea's S-JAR, a one turret, can detect intruders and decide, on its own, whether to fire. The U.S. Department of Defense, once cautious, is racing to integrate AI into its air fleet. Projects like Skyborg aim to embed machine learning into fighter jets. DARPA's Offset program simulates how swarms of drones might coordinate strikes autonomously. This shift isn't just about efficiency. It's about removing friction from the kill chain. Humans hesitate. Algorithms don't. A drone with a human pilot might second-guess, delay, abort. But when targeting is automated, that moment of doubt disappears, replaced by lines of code designed for speed, not reflection. The battlefield is becoming a feedback loop of data and automation. And somewhere along the line, the pilot was written out. In traditional warfare, a decision to strike follows a chain of command. With autonomous drones, the chain ends with a chip. Most of these systems are powered by black box algorithms, AI models that take in data, process it, and output a decision. But they don't explain how they got there. When a drone flags a heat signature for elimination, there's no way to peek inside and ask, why this target? Was it movement speed? Gait abnormality? A pattern that resembled known threats? Even the developers of these models often don't know. In 2021, a drone strike in Syria killed 3 civilians riding motorcycles. U.S. officials said they matched a threat profile. But what was that profile? What data fed the match? What algorithm made the final call? The answer remains classified. Black box models don't produce transparency. They produce silence. And the implications are deeper than any one strike. Military-grade AI systems are increasingly proprietary. Contractors build them. Governments buy them. But no one outside the lab may ever see the source code. This makes accountability nearly impossible. In some systems, decisions are encrypted and logged, but the logs are buried behind security firewalls or deemed too technical to explain. If an autonomous drone kills the wrong person, the investigation may be limited to the model was functioning within parameters. That's not justice. It's a shrug in code. And in war, that shrug can cost lives. The danger isn't just malfunction. It's unknowable function, code that performs as designed, yet delivers outcomes no one intended and no one can explain. When killing becomes a process without witness or question, we step into a war that no longer belongs to us. When a soldier pulls the trigger, responsibility is clear. But when a drone does it, guided by thousands of lines of AI code, who takes the blame? Is it the engineer who wrote the algorithm? The commander who deployed the drone? The company that sold the software? This is the accountability crisis of autonomous weapons. International law, including the Geneva Conventions, requires human combatants to distinguish between civilians and enemy fighters. It demands accountability for wrongful death. But algorithms don't carry passports. They don't stand trial. In 2019, a drone strike in Afghanistan hit a wedding convoy. A justification? An anomalous movement pattern matched to known terrorist behavior. No human confirmed the identity. No one was punished. The report? The system operated as intended. That's the loophole, when intention becomes automation. Military AI often relies on pattern recognition. It learns that certain combinations, motorbikes in rural zones, gatherings near certain buildings, correlate with past threats. But those patterns aren't perfect. They reflect past data, not present truth. And when they're wrong, the system doesn't apologize. It logs. It resets. It moves on. Human soldiers can be prosecuted for war crimes. Drones cannot. Yet the result, a civilian death, is the same. As more countries adopt autonomous weapons, this legal blind spot grows. The UN has warned of an accountability vacuum. Advocacy groups are calling for meaningful human control in every lethal decision. But governments, seeking speed and deniability, often prefer machines that don't ask questions and don't require explanations. If no one is clearly in charge, then no one can clearly be blamed. And that may be the most dangerous feature of all. Unlike nuclear weapons, autonomous drones don't require rare materials, decades of testing, or international treaties. They require code, a few sensors, and an internet connection. This low barrier has sparked a silent arms race, one that's accelerating in real time. More than 30 nations are developing or deploying AI-enabled weapons. The US, China, Russia, Israel, Turkey, all racing to build faster, smarter, deadlier systems. But this race isn't limited to superpowers. Small states and non-state actors are entering too. Why? Because autonomy scales. In 2021, a drone swarm was tested in Azerbaijan. Each unit identified and tracked targets without needing a human signal. The footage was used for military propaganda. In Libya, loitering munitions operated independently for hours, selecting when and whom to strike. Cheap parts, open-source AI, and off-the-shelf drones mean a lethal system can be built for less than the cost of a tank tire. Militias, cartels, even terrorist groups now have access to semi-autonomous strike tech. It's not science fiction. It's already happened. In this new arms race, deterrence is complicated. You can't track an arms buildup when it's made of software. And global treaties? Still non-existent. There's no AI equivalent of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty. No enforced global ban on autonomous weapons. Only voluntary statements, many ignored. The risk isn't just escalation. It's normalization. Once these systems are embedded in warfare, they become expected, then required. And that raises the ultimate question. If everyone has a killbot, does anyone still have control? Today's autonomous weapons don't always come from military labs. They come from commercial offices. A traffic monitoring AI, trained to spot jaywalkers, gets retooled to flag suspicious movement in a war zone. A drone startup designs navigation software for agriculture, then sells it to a defense contractor. This is the dual-use dilemma. The same code that powers civilian convenience can also guide lethal force. In Ukraine, AI systems help drones find artillery positions. In Gaza, loitering drones hover for hours, identifying targets based on real-time patterns. But these tools weren't always built for war. Some started as logistic solutions, others as disaster relief tech. The transformation happens in the licensing, and often in secrecy, and there's little oversight. Private companies aren't bound by the Geneva Conventions. They're driven by profit, contracts, and national interest. Some developers claim their software is non-lethal. But once integrated into a military system, the lines blur. Even the camera in your smartphone could, in theory, become a sensor for targeting. The problem isn't just the weaponization, it's the invisibility of it all. Code doesn't wear a uniform. It doesn't stand trial. And in a world where algorithms are everywhere, warfare can hide in plain sight. In theory, the rise of autonomous weapons should trigger global alarm. But in practice, most of the world isn't paying attention. There are no binding UN treaties banning fully autonomous weapons. No global moratoriums. No required transparency on AI-based targeting. Instead, we see voluntary guidelines, position papers, vague promises of ethical AI. Meanwhile, over 30 countries continue developing or deploying these systems, each citing national security, and the public? Largely unaware. Why? Because these drones don't parade through capitals. They don't drop mushroom clouds. They don't create visible shockwaves. They kill quietly. One person, one match, one click, out of sight, out of the loop. Investigations into autonomous strikes are rare. Accountability is murky. Often, a family receives no warning, no explanation, just wreckage. Even whistleblowers find it hard to speak, because much of the tech is protected under defense secrecy or corporate NDAs. And as long as there's no footage, no viral image, the world moves on. The battlefield is becoming invisible, and so are the debates. But invisibility isn't neutrality. Silence doesn't mean safety. It means these choices about life and death, ethics and automation, are being made without the world watching. Not all who build the technology remain silent. Across labs and defense contractors, some engineers are beginning to speak up. They warn that the line between decision support and lethal autonomy is being quietly crossed. At major tech firms, internal protests have erupted over contracts with the military. In 2018, Google employees revolted against Project Maven, an AI initiative to help analyze drone footage. The backlash forced Google to withdraw, but many programs continue, under different names, in quieter places. Some researchers now refuse to work on autonomous weapons. Others are demanding accountability, audit trails, ethical boards, and strict limits on where AI can be deployed. The resistance isn't just moral, it's technical. Even the most advanced AI systems are brittle. They fail in unexpected ways. They misclassify objects. They act on correlations that make no human sense. And yet, the machines are given more power each year. To many engineers, that feels like handing a loaded weapon to a child and hoping they've learned enough. Some are trying to rewrite the code, literally. Open-source watchdog groups now monitor global defense patents. Independent labs simulate failures. Whistleblowers document misuse. A new kind of front line is forming, not on the battlefield, but in code bases, conferences, and terminals, because those writing the algorithms understand what's really at stake. And some believe that if they don't act now, no one else will. The rise of autonomous weapons isn't just a military shift. It's a policy transformation happening in silence. For decades, governments debated arms treaties in public forums, with diplomats, media, and public pressure shaping the outcomes. But with AI, decisions are increasingly made in classified budgets and private boardrooms. There are no treaties banning autonomous drones, no global standard on human oversight, just vague pledges, draft proposals, and legal gray zones. In 2021, the United Nations held talks to limit lethal autonomous weapons. The discussions stalled, blocked by countries developing the very systems under scrutiny. The United States argued that existing laws of war are sufficient. Russia and China pushed back on definitions, and smaller nations struggled for leverage. Meanwhile, defense budgets quietly balloon. Tech giants win contracts worth billions. Startups get venture capital to weaponize pattern recognition, and the machines keep learning. The danger isn't just what these systems can do, it's how normal they're becoming. A drone that picks targets used to sound like science fiction. Now it's a line item in procurement. Policy, once made by legislators and generals, is now written in code and machine logic. And without visibility or regulation, we risk a future where the rules of war are decided by firmware updates, and accountability becomes a glitch. In this world, transparency is not a luxury, it's survival. The algorithm doesn't see nationality, or intention, or a plea for mercy. It sees motion, heat, anomaly, and it acts. That's not science fiction. It's already real, and it's spreading. But nothing about this future is inevitable. Around the world, ethicists, scientists, and soldiers are pushing back. Some refuse to build. Some demand rules. Others speak out from inside the system. In 2023, over 3,000 AI researchers signed an open letter demanding international bans on fully autonomous weapons. In Geneva, diplomats from dozens of nations have renewed calls for binding regulation. In parliaments, civilian oversight is growing louder. Some countries have even halted development altogether. Because the question isn't whether machines will keep getting smarter. It's whether humanity will stay in the loop. The most powerful weapon in this story isn't the drone. It's the decision to use it or not. And that decision is still ours to make. So as the code advances, and the drones take flight, we must ask not just what is possible, but what is right. Because in the end, the most dangerous algorithm is silence.